Hello there, welcome to HFY Sci-Fi Galaxy, where humans face the unknown, outsmart the impossible, and turn every test into victory. So sit back and let the story begin.
Nobody talked in the waiting hall. For 100 bodies sat in neat rows under white lights, and the only sound was the low hum of the station's air filters. Every few minutes, a soft chime would ring, and 20 more names would appear on the display wall. Those 20 would stand, walk through the silver doors at the far end, and come back 5 minutes later with a green band on their wrist. Approved. It had been like this all day. Danny Okafor sat in row 19, seat 7, watching the process with quiet interest. She was one of 3 humans in the hall. The other 2 sat far away from her, near the back. She did not know them. Around her, the seats were filled with species she had only read about in orientation files. Tall ones, short ones, scaled ones, feathered ones. All of them waiting for the same thing. The candidate beside her was a Palhari named Ren. He was shorter than Danny, with smooth blue-green skin and wide dark eyes that blinked sideways. He had been fidgeting with his hands since she sat down. "First time off your homeworld?" Danny asked. Ren looked at her surprised. "Is it that obvious?" "A little." He let out a shaky breath. "Palhar is mostly water. Open oceans, shallow reefs. I've never been in a place with so many walls." Danny nodded. "I get that. Where I come from, we have a saying. New places feel small until you make them yours." "Where are you from?" "Earth." Ren tilted his head. "I have not heard of it. Is it a water world too?" Danny smiled. "It has water. It has a lot of everything, actually." Before Ren could ask more, the chime rang again. His name appeared on the wall. He stood quickly, almost tripping over his own feet. "Good luck," Danny said. "Thank you. You as well." She watched him disappear through the silver doors with 19 others. 5 minutes later, they all came back. Green bands on every wrist. Ren caught her eye from across the hall and gave her a small, relieved wave. The recruitment AI running the process was called Arya. Danny had read about it during the trip to Station Pull-Up 9. Arya had screened over 2 million candidates across 80 species without a single error. It scanned biology, psychology, physical ability, homeworld data, and threat levels. The whole process took less than 4 minutes per group. Clean, fast, and fair. Nobody worried about Arya screening. It was a formality. Almost everyone past point 3 more groups went through. Green bands, green bands, green bands. A tall insectoid candidate named Fida walked out of the chamber looking bored, flexing all 4 of her arms like the scan had been a waste of her time. Then Danny's group was called. She stood with 19 others and walked toward the silver doors. Her boots were the loudest sound in the hall. The doors slid open, and the group entered a long white room. Scanning panels lined the walls. A calm blue light filled the space. "Please remain still," Arya's voice said. It was smooth, genderless, and polite. "The assessment will take approximately 3 minutes." Blue light swept over them. Danny felt a slight warmth on her skin, nothing more. Around her, the other candidates stood relaxed. One of them yawned. 1 minute passed. 2 minutes, 82 minutes and 40 seconds. The blue light above Danny changed color. It shifted from calm blue to deep amber. She looked up. None of the other scanning lights had changed. The warmth on her skin increased. The scan was still running. On her, only her 0.3 minutes passed. 4, 5 that the other candidates were glancing at her now. A few stepped away. The amber light was pulsing. In the observation room above the chamber, Supervisor Gollin leaned forward in his chair. He was Mirati, thin and pale, with long fingers that were now gripping the edge of his console. He had overseen 11 recruitment cycles. He had never seen an amber light. "Arya," he said carefully, "report." The AI did not answer immediately. For a system that processed data in nanoseconds, the pause was terrifying. Then Arya spoke. Not just in the observation room, not just in the chamber. Its voice came through every speaker on the recruitment floor, cutting through the silence of the waiting hall like a blade. "Candidate flagged. Deathworld origin detected. Escalation required." The waiting hall went dead silent. 400 candidates turned to look at the silver doors, Inside the chamber, the other 19 candidates received their green bands and hurried out. Danny stood alone under the amber light. She did not move. She did not panic. She just looked up at the light above her and waited. Galen's fingers were shaking. He opened a priority channel to the Union Council. "This is Supervisor Galen on Pulov 9. I need a senior director immediately. We have a Deathworld flag." The voice on the other end was quiet for a long moment. "Confirm that, Supervisor." "Confirmed. One candidate. Species, human. Homeworld Earth. Arya has flagged her and is requesting living authority to proceed." Another pause. "A director is on the way. Do not release the candidate." Galen closed the channel and looked down at the chamber. Danny Okafor stood perfectly still in the amber light, hands at her sides, breathing steady. She looked calm. That somehow made it worse. The holding room had one chair, one table, and no windows. The walls were smooth gray metal. The door had no handle on the inside. Danny sat in the chair, rested her elbows on the table, and waited. She had been waiting for over an hour. She was not handcuffed. Nobody had been rude to her. A small service drone had even brought her water. But the door was locked, and no one had told her why. She drank the water and kept waiting 0.2 floors above. Supervisor Galen stood at attention in his own office, while Director Sabi Nur read through Arya's flag report on a glowing display. Sabi Nur was senior Mirati, older than Galen by several decades. With sharp silver eyes and a reputation for never making a decision, she could not defend in front of the full council. She read slowly. She read everything twice. "How did this happen?" she asked without looking up. "She applied through standard channels," Galen said. "Her species is registered with the Union. There was nothing in the preliminary paperwork that would have caught it. Earth is listed in our databases, but its classification has not been updated in years. And Arya caught it during the biological scan." "Yes, Director." Sabi Nur turned to the second display, where Dr. Palam was waiting on a live feed. Palam was Keshu, a small species with large round eyes and delicate hands built for laboratory work. He was the station's lead biologist, and he looked like he had not slept since the flag was raised. "Doctor," Sabi Nur said, "tell me about Earth." Palam swallowed hard. "Earth is classified as a Category 7 Deathworld. That is the second highest classification we have. The planet has extreme axial tilt, which causes violent seasonal changes. Temperatures range from 60 degrees below zero to over 50 above. The gravity is 1.4 times our galactic median. The atmosphere contains 21% oxygen." Sabi Nur's eyes narrowed. "Oxygen is corrosive and flammable," Palam added. "The biosphere is aggressive. Earth hosts an estimated 8 million species, many of them predatory. Venomous creatures exist on every continent and in every ocean. Bacterial and viral life forms are so advanced that the planet's dominant species evolved an immune system that essentially wages constant biological warfare inside their own bodies. And the candidate is from this world, born and raised. Director, I have reviewed her biological scan 3 times. Her skeletal structure is reinforced and self-repairing. If a bone breaks, it heals stronger than before. Her muscles operate on a chemical called adrenaline that temporarily increases strength, speed, and pain resistance. She can function without sleep for days. She can digest foods that would poison most species in this station. She can survive temperature ranges that would kill a Palhari in minutes." Sabi Nur was quiet for a long moment. "What are you telling me, Doctor?" Palam looked directly at the screen. "I'm telling you that by the biological standards of every other species in the Galactic Union, Danny Okafor is an apex predator. She is sitting in your holding room, and she is more dangerous than anything most of these candidates have ever encountered." The silence that followed was heavy. Sabi Nur closed the biological report and turned to the main console. "Arya." "Yes, Director. Your flag is an escalation, not a rejection." "Explain." "My protocols do not permit me to approve or deny a Deathworld origin candidate. The decision carries political, ethical, and security implications that exceed my authority. A living official must make the final determination. And if I deny her, that is within your authority." Galen, who had been standing silently by the wall, spoke up. Arya, I have one question. Based on your full assessment, is this candidate a threat? The AI paused for exactly 1 second. In Arya's processing terms, that was an eternity. Negative, Arya said. Candidate Okafor's psychological profile indicates high empathy, strong protective instincts, and a deeply cooperative nature. Her threat risk index is among the lowest in this recruitment cycle. She is not a threat. Then what is she? Zabino asked. She is, by every metric I am capable of measuring, the single most capable candidate in this entire recruitment cycle. Her physical scores exceed the next closest candidate by a factor of 3. Her psychological resilience is unmatched. Her survival instincts are beyond anything in my operational database. Sabiner stared at the console. You are telling me the most dangerous candidate you have ever scanned is also the best. That is correct, Director. Sabiner turned off the display. She stood still for a full minute, thinking. Galen did not interrupt her. He knew better. Finally, she said, I want her tested, not the standard battery. I want the deep field evaluations. Endurance, survival, and psychological. The ones we designed for worst-case deployments. If she passes, we talk. If she fails even one, she goes home. Understood, Galen said. And Galen, yes, Director. I want every second of it recorded. If this goes wrong, I need to be able to show the Council that we were careful. Galen nodded and left to deliver the news. 2 floors below, Danny was still sitting in the holding room. When the door finally opened and Galen told her what was happening, she listened without expression. When he finished, she asked only one question. When do we start? Galen blinked. Tomorrow morning. Danny nodded. Good. I have been sitting in this room for 2 hours. I could use the exercise. Galen stared at her for a moment, then turned and walked away. He did not know what to make of her. He was not sure anyone did. The endurance track was built for punishment. It stretched across 2 kilometers of Station Pullov 9's lower training deck, a winding course of climbing walls, weighted carries, pressure corridors, and zero-gravity tunnels. The station's engineers had designed it to push candidates to 70% of their species' physical limit. Most recruits finished in about 45 minutes. The fastest time on record was 31 minutes, set by a Torvin commando 3 years ago. Danny finished in 19. She was not even breathing hard when she crossed the line. She just stopped, stretched her shoulders, and looked up at the observation deck where Supervisor Galen, Director Sabiner, and Dr. Palom stood watching. Galen checked the timer twice. That has to be wrong, Sabiner said. It is not wrong, Arya replied through the room speakers. Candidate Okafor's completion time is 19 minutes and 14 seconds. This is a new station record by a margin of 11 minutes and 46 seconds. Sabiner said nothing. She just wrote something on her data pad and moved on. The second test was worse. They called it the survival chamber. It was a massive enclosed environment, half a kilometer wide, designed to simulate a hostile alien jungle. The air inside was laced with low-level toxins. The temperature shifted randomly between freezing and boiling. Simulated predators roamed the terrain, programmed to track movement and body heat. Equipment provided to candidates was deliberately damaged or incomplete. The goal was simple. Survive for 6 hours. 20 candidates entered at once. Danny was among them. So were Rin and Fida, who had both volunteered for the advanced trial when they heard what was happening. Nobody had asked them to. They had simply shown up. The first hour was manageable. Candidates spread out, found shelter, and tried to get their bearings. By the second hour, the temperature had dropped to near freezing, and 3 candidates tapped out. By the third hour, 2 more quit when a simulated predator cornered them near a river crossing. Fida lasted 4 hours. She used her analytical mind to map the predator patrol routes and avoid them entirely. She built a sealed shelter from local materials and waited. When a sudden temperature spike melted her shelter walls, she calmly rebuilt. When she finally tapped out at the 4-hour mark, it was only because a simulated toxin cloud overwhelmed her breathing filters. Ren lasted 3 hours. He did well in the water sections, swimming through flooded tunnels faster than anything the simulation had prepared for. But on dry land, he was slower, and when a predator burst from the undergrowth in front of him, he froze. His body locked up completely. He could not move. The predator was simulated. It would not actually hurt him, but his body did not know that. Danny was 200 meters away when she heard the alert tone that meant a candidate was in distress. She did not hesitate. She turned and ran toward the signal, crashing through dense undergrowth, jumping a ravine, and arriving at Ren's position in under a minute. The simulated predator was circling him. It was big, four-legged, built like a cross between a bear and a lizard. Its eyes tracked Danny as she entered the clearing. She did not slow down. She charged straight at it, grabbed a fallen branch the size of her arm, and swung it hard into the predator's flank. The simulation registered the impact, and the creature stumbled. Danny put herself between it and Ren, feet planted, branch raised, and let out a shout that echoed through the entire chamber. The predator retreated. In the observation room, Dr. Palom was gripping the railing. She just charged a class 3 simulated apex predator. With a stick. I can see that, Sabiner said quietly. On Earth, Palom continued, his voice unsteady. They call this behavior normal. Danny helped Ren to his feet. He was shaking. You could have been hurt, he said. I am fine. It was right there. I know. Are you okay? He stared at her. How are you not afraid? Danny thought about that for a second. I was afraid. I just moved anyway. Ren tapped out after that. But he was safe, and that was what mattered. Danny survived the full 6 hours. She built shelter, found clean water, set traps, navigated every temperature shift, and never once triggered a predator attack after the first one. The jungle did not beat her. She made it hers. The third test came the next day. It was just her and Arya, alone in a quiet room. This evaluation is psychological, Arya said. I will ask you questions. Please answer honestly. Okay. The questions started easy. Then they got harder. Arya asked about fear, about anger, about what Danny would do if she had to choose between saving one life and completing a mission. It asked about guilt. It asked about loss. Danny talked about her years doing rescue work on Earth. She talked about floods and earthquakes and wildfires. She talked about the people she saved and the ones she could not. Her voice stayed steady, but her eyes were wet when she described carrying a child out of a collapsed building during the Lagos quake. Why do you want to join the Frontier Corps? Arya asked. Because I'm good at keeping people alive, she said. And it does not matter to me what species they are. Arya processed her responses for 12 seconds. Then it opened a channel to Sabi Nur. Director, candidate Okafor does not merely pass the psychological evaluation. She exceeds every benchmark I have on record. Her empathy index is the highest I have measured in any species. Denying her entry would be a disservice to the Corps and to the Union. Sabi Nur closed her eyes. She was quiet for a long time. Approved, she said. Conditionally. In the quiet room, Danny let out a slow breath. She did not celebrate. She just nodded once, stood up, and walked out to join the others. There was work to do. Sergeant Briel did not believe in gentle introductions. On the first morning of formal training, he walked into the barracks at 400 hours, slammed a metal rod against the wall hard enough to dent it, and told every recruit in the room that they had exactly 90 seconds to be standing in formation outside, or they would run laps until their legs stopped working. 42 recruits scrambled out of their bunks in panic. Danny was already dressed. She had woken 10 minutes before the alarm out of habit and had been lacing her boots in the dark when Briel came through the door that he noticed. He did not say anything about it, but he noticed Briel was Torvin, a species built like a tank crossed with a horse. For thick legs, a broad armored torso, 2 powerful arms, and a face full of scars that told stories he never shared. He had trained hundreds of recruits across dozens of species. He respected results, hated excuses, and had a voice that could crack stone. For the first week, he ran them through basic drills. Formation movement, equipment handling, communication protocols, emergency procedures. The work was exhausting for most recruits. Danny kept pace easily, but she did not show off. She helped when others struggled. She carried extra weight during marches without being asked. She learned the names and abilities of every recruit in her squad within 3 days. Her squad was Squad 7. Besides Danny, it included Rin, Fida, and 4 others from different species. They were an odd group. Rin was fast in water, but slow on land. Fida was brilliant at analysis, but physically fragile. A tall Brevin named Salo was strong, but had terrible aim. A small Yunny named Kessie could see in complete darkness, but panicked in open spaces. Danny learned all of this quietly. She watched, she asked questions, and she remembered. Not everyone in the training program was happy about her presence. A group of recruits from a species called the Hoven made it clear from the first day that they did not think a Deathworlder belonged among civilized soldiers. They never said it directly to her face. They said it loudly in the mess hall when she was 2 tables away. They said it in the corridors when she passed. They said it with looks and silence and turned backs. Danny ignored it. She had dealt with worse on Earth. Fida did not ignore it. On the 4th day, she walked up to the loudest of the Hoven recruits and said, in her flat analytical tone, "I have calculated that candidate Okafor could disable every person at this table in approximately 8 seconds. The fact that she has not done so is something you should think about carefully." The table went quiet. Fida walked away. Danny, who had overheard from across the room, said nothing. But that night in the barracks, she told Fida she did not need anyone to fight her battles. Fida tilted her head. "I was not fighting your battle. I was correcting a logical error." Danny almost laughed. The real test came at the end of the 2nd week. Brielle announced a team combat exercise. Each squad would face a simulated enemy force in an urban environment. The scenario was designed so that no squad had ever completed it in under 20 minutes. Most squads took 30 or more. Some never completed it at all. Squad 7 entered the simulation zone at midday. The urban environment was a maze of narrow streets, ruined buildings, and blocked sight lines. The simulated enemy was fast, coordinated, and outnumbered them 2-1 within the first 3 minutes. Squad 7 was pinned behind a collapsed wall. Energy fire rained down from 3 directions. Salo tried to return fire and missed every shot. Kessie curled into a ball behind a pillar. Ren pressed himself flat against the ground, breathing fast. Danny crouched in the middle of them, completely calm. "Listen to me," she said. Her voice was not loud, but it cut through the noise like a blade. "Fida, I need you to map the firing positions. How many, where, and which ones move." Fida's 4 hands flew across her tactical pad. 3 fixed positions. 2 mobile. Pattern repeats every 12 seconds. Good. Kessie, there is a side alley 20 meters to our left. It is dark. You can see in the dark. I need you to move through it and get behind the fixed position on the east wall. Can you do that? Kessie looked up, trembling. Then she nodded. Salo, forget aiming. I need you to lay down suppressive fire. Just noise and light. Keep their heads down for 15 seconds. Salo grinned. That I can do. Rin, there is a drainage channel under the street. It is flooded. I need you to swim through it and come up behind the west position. Rin blinked. How do you know there is a drainage channel? I saw the grate when we entered. The water level tells me it connects to the other side. Rin stared at her for a second, then nodded. Go on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Move. They moved. Salo opened fire, filling the street with noise. Kessie slipped into the darkness like smoke. Rin dropped into the drainage channel and vanished under the water. Fida called out position updates in real time, and Danny went straight up the middle, drawing fire, moving fast, using cover, pulling every enemy eye toward her while her squad flanked from 3 sides. IT was over in 8 minutes and 41 seconds. Sergeant Brielle watched the replay 3 times. He said nothing for a long while. Then he looked at Danny and gave her a single, slow nod. That night in the barracks, the squad sat together on the floor, exhausted and buzzing with energy. Ren was still dripping wet. Kessie was smiling for the first time since training began. Ren looked at Danny. I was scared of you when I first heard the Deathworld flag. Now I'm scared of going into the field without you. Fida clicked her mandibles. You are the most dangerous person I have ever met. And somehow, that makes me feel safe. Danny looked at each of them. Her squad. Her people. She smiled and said nothing. But something warm settled deep in her chest, and she held on to it. Halwyn, 3 looked like a painting from orbit. Rolling green fields, silver rivers, soft hills covered in purple wildflowers. It was one of the quietest agricultural colonies in the Union, home to about 3,000 Suri farmers who had never known conflict and never wanted to. Now there were fires on the horizon. Squad 7's transport broke through the atmosphere at dawn. Danny stood at the open bay door, one hand gripping the overhead rail, watching the colony grow larger below. Columns of smoke rose from the eastern fields. 2 grain storage buildings were already destroyed. The Marauders had hit 3 times in the last 10 days, each raid bolder than the one before. The briefing said the raiders were Viraki. Big, fast, aggressive. They operated in packs of 8 to 12. Intelligence estimated 15 of them in the area. Intelligence was wrong. The transport set down on the colony's central landing pad. The Suri were waiting, but not in welcome. They stood in tight clusters near their homes, watching the soldiers step off the ramp with wide, frightened eyes. The Suri were small and delicate, with soft gray fur and long ears that folded flat when they were afraid. Every ear in the colony was flat. Squad 7's arrival did not comfort them. When the colony elder, a frail, old Suri named Hafen, learned that one of the soldiers was a Deathworlder, he took a step backward and nearly fell. "We asked for protection," he said to Sergeant Briel, who had come along as field supervisor. "Not a predator." Briel looked at Danny. She met his gaze and gave a small shake of her head. She would handle this herself. She did not push. She did not argue. She just started working. She carried supply crates from the transport to the colony storehouse. She helped repair a fence that the last raid had torn apart. She hauled water from the river for a family whose pump had been smashed. The Suri watched her from a distance at first, then from closer. Then a group of Suri children, too curious to be afraid, wandered up to her while she was stacking grain sacks. They stared at her with enormous round eyes. The bravest one tugged on her sleeve and asked why she was so tall. "My planet has strong gravity," Danny said. "Everything there grows tough." "Are you tough?" "When I need to be. Right now I'm just carrying grain." The child laughed. The others came closer. By the end of the afternoon, Danny had a small crowd of Suri children following her everywhere she went. Hafen watched from his doorway, still cautious, but his ears had risen slightly. Night came fast on Halwyn 3. The twin moons gave the fields a pale, silver glow. Squad 7 set up a perimeter around the colony's core buildings. Fida ran sensor sweeps. Rin monitored communications. Salamanda watchtower. Kessie patrolled the dark edges of the colony, her night vision turning every shadow transparent. Danny stood at the north fence line, listening. Earth had taught her to trust her instincts, and her instincts were screaming. The Viraki hit at midnight. They came from 3 directions at once, fast and coordinated, howling war cries that shook the air. And there were not 15 of them. There were 30 that the first wave crashed into the eastern perimeter. Salo opened fire from the watchtower, dropping 2 raiders before they reached the fence. But the sheer numbers overwhelmed the line within seconds. A second wave hit the south side. A third came from the west, heading straight for the central storehouse where the colonists were sheltering. Danny was already moving. She called orders as she ran. "Fida, coordinate the squad. Ren, cover the storehouse entrance. Kessie, take out their scouts in the dark. Salo, keep that tower." She met the western wave head-on at the storehouse gate. 3 Viraki charged her at once. They were each a full head taller than her, thick-limbed, with jagged bone ridges running down their arms. They expected her to break. She did not break. She caught the first one with a low tackle that used its own momentum to throw it sideways into the second. The third swung a heavy arm at her head. She ducked, stepped inside its guard, and drove her elbow into its throat. It dropped. Gasping point, 2 more came. Then 3 more. Danny fought them all. She took a slash across her left arm that cut deep. She did not stop. Her body flooded with adrenaline. And for the first time in training or combat, her squad saw what a human looked like when survival instincts took full control. She was fast. Not just quick, fast in a way that seemed wrong for something her size. She hit hard, moved constantly, and never stopped talking. She called positions. She warned teammates. She directed the entire defense while bleeding from her arm and fighting hand to hand. The Viraki were warriors. But Danny was something they had never faced before. Something that hurt when hit, but did not fall. Something that got faster when it bled. Something that fought harder the more desperate things became. They broke. Slowly at first, then all at once. The remaining raiders scattered into the fields and disappeared into the dark hills. When it was over, Danny stood in front of the storehouse, chest heaving, blood dripping from her arm onto the dirt. Around her lay a dozen unconscious Viraki. Not dead. She had disabled every one of them. She could have killed them. She had chosen not to. The storehouse door opened slowly. The Suri colonists came out one by one. Hafen was among them. He looked at Danny, at the blood on her arm, at the fallen raiders, at the unbroken walls of his colony, that a small Suri child walked through the crowd, crossed the open ground, and took Danny's hand. Hafen approached. His ears were fully upright for the first time since they had arrived. "We were afraid of the wrong people," he said quietly. Danny looked down at the child holding her hand, then back at the elder. She did not have words for what she felt. She just nodded. Behind her, Rin let out a breath he had been holding for what felt like an hour. Fida lowered her tactical pad and clicked her mandibles softly. The fires were out. The colony was safe, and Squad 7 was still standing. Rin wrote his personal testimony on the transport ride home. He sat in the corner of the cargo bay with a datapad balanced on his knees and typed with both hands while the stars slid past the viewport. He did not stop until he was finished, and he did not edit a single word. "I have served beside many brave soldiers during this deployment. Danny Okafor is the only one who makes me believe we will all come home. She was the first to fight and the last to rest. She bled for people she had never met and species she had only just learned the names of. I was afraid of her once. I'm not afraid anymore. I am afraid of what this Corps would look like without her." He sent it directly to Supervisor Gallant. Fida's report was different. She wrote it in the precise, cold language of a tactical analyst, and every line hit like a hammer. Candidate Okafor's Deathworld physiology is not a liability. It is the single greatest strategic asset the Frontier Protection Corps has ever fielded. During the HAL 1-3 engagement, she sustained injuries that would have incapacitated any other species in the squad and continued to fight at full effectiveness. She neutralized 12 hostiles without a single fatality. She coordinated squad-wide tactical movements while engaged in hand-to-hand combat. Recommend immediate expansion of Deathworld recruitment to all active Corps divisions. She sent it to Director Sabi Nur personally. Squad 7 arrived back at Station Pulav, 9 to a reception they did not expect. The landing bay was full. Recruits, trainers, station staff, and a handful of Union officials stood along the walkway as they stepped off the transport. Word had traveled fast. The HAL 1-3 mission was already being called the cleanest frontier operation in a decade. 0 civilian casualties. 0 friendly deaths. Full neutralization of the Marauder threat. Sergeant Briel was waiting at the bottom of the ramp. He looked at Squad 7 as they filed past. When Danny reached him, he extended one of his massive arms and placed his hand on her shoulder. It was the first time anyone had seen him touch a recruit. "Well done, soldier," he said. Danny nodded. "Thank you, Sergeant." He held her gaze for a moment, then stepped aside. That was all. From Briel, it was everything. 3 days later, Director Sabi Nurse sat alone in her office reading the full mission report for the 4th time. She had also read Rin's testimony, Fida's tactical assessment, Briel's field evaluation, and the recorded footage from every helmet camera in the squad. She had watched Danny charge 30 Viraki raiders with nothing but her bare hands and a voice that held her squad together. She had watched her bleed and keep fighting. She had watched her spare every enemy she put down. And she had watched a Suri child take her hand in the aftermath. Sabi Nur was not a sentimental person. She had built her career on caution, precision, and political awareness. She did not make decisions based on feelings. But something about that moment, the child's hand reaching up and the Deathworlder's hand reaching down, had stayed with her in a way she could not explain. She took the report to the Union Council the next morning. The chamber was full. Representatives from 46 species sat in their designated seats, arranged in a wide semicircle around the central platform. Sabi Nurse stood at the podium and presented her findings without emotion. She laid out the data, the mission results, the biological assessments, the psychological evaluations. There was debate. There was always debate. A Hovan counselor argued that integrating Deathworlders was too great a risk. A Brevin representative asked what would happen if a human lost control. A Palhari delegate said nothing and simply projected Ren's testimony onto the main screen for everyone to read. Then Arya was consulted. The AI's projection appeared above the council floor, a simple graph with 2 lines. One showed mission success rates with current core composition. The other showed projected rates with even a small number of Deathworld origin recruits integrated into active squads. Success rates increased by over 40%. Casualty rates dropped by 60%. This is not because Deathworlders are weapons, Arya said, its calm voice filling the chamber. It is because they are survivors. They are protectors. They are leaders who perform best when conditions are worst. They do not replace other species. They elevate them. The council voted. It was not unanimous. It was not even close to unanimous. But the motion passed by a clear margin. Earth was officially added to the Galactic Union's active recruitment list for the Frontier Protection Corps. The news reached Dani while she was eating lunch in the mess hall with Ren and Fida. Golan delivered it in person, standing at the end of their table with a look on his face that was somewhere between disbelief and quiet respect. "You have been reassigned," he told Dani. "Effective immediately, you are the Corps' first Deathworld recruitment liaison. New human candidates will be arriving within the month. The Council wants you to guide them through the process." Dani set down her fork. "Me? You? Apparently Arya recommended you specifically." Dani looked at Ren. He was grinning so wide his sideways blinking eyes had nearly disappeared. Fida clicked her mandibles in what Dani had learned months ago was a Tessic laugh point 2 weeks later. Dani stood in the same recruitment hall where she had first been flagged. But now she was on the other side. She wore a Corps uniform with a squad insignia on her shoulder. Ren stood on her left. Fida stood on her right. A new batch of candidates entered through the main doors. 400 of them, just like before. And among them, near the middle of the crowd, 3 humans. They were young, wide-eyed, and obviously nervous. They looked around the massive hall the same way Dani had, months ago, trying to make sense of a galaxy that was bigger than anything they had imagined. Arya began its scans. The first group passed. Green bands. The second group passed. Green bands. Then the group with the 3 humans walked through the silver doors. The amber light activated. 3 times. "Deathworld origin detected," Arya announced. The hall went quiet, just like before. But this time, Arya continued. It added a note that was not part of any standard protocol, a note it had written itself. Recommended for immediate acceptance. The 3 humans walked out of the chamber, looking confused and scared. They saw Dani waiting for them in the corridor. She smiled. It was a warm smile, the kind that made people feel safe even when nothing else did. "Welcome to the Corps," she said. "You're going to do just fine." Ren nudged her arm. "You started something, you know." Dani looked at the new recruits, then at Ren, then at Fida. Her squad. Her family. "No," she said. "We started something." Fida clicked her mandibles. "The galaxy will never be the same." Dani nodded. "Good.